Use of political discourse within the 21st century versus the 19th century. Summary of Amusing Ourselves to Death. Within the novel Amusing Ourselves to Death, author Neil Postman illustrates that he sees the decline of print and the immersion of television as problematic to the blind acceptance of televised information. In doing so, he mentions that the information being televised to the 21st century needs plain language in order to understand context, whereas the intellectuals of the 19th century were mandated to understand lengthy and complex discourse. In comparison to the news today, speechwriters incorporate plain language to get a news story or message across. Advertising uses emotional appeal instead of appealing to a consumer's more well-reasoned mindset. Postman argues that this transformative shift began with the age of exposition. Information could only travel as fast as the fastest train, but the age of show business introduced mass amounts of irrelevant and impertinent information at one's fingertips. The phonograph was introduced, followed by the telegraph, which made news more widely and easily accessible. Little context is needed to understand news stories, or as Postman refers to it, news stories have a pseudo-context. Newscasters are examined based on their credibility in which they project, not their reliability. The slogan, "The medium is the metaphor," comes into play here. The medium dictates the form of discourse. For television, it is often thought to be fast-paced, a commercial averaging 30 seconds or so. Print takes longer to digest than just hearing or watching presented information. He asserts that many consumers may not remember what they have seen or heard within 1 hour of broadcast. While this may be the case, I argue that television is no different than watching a debate in person. The debate still requires intense focus, ability to comprehend complex issues, knowledge of previous occurrences, and an overall willingness to truly defend and debate issues being presented. The medium is the message in most cases, but debate is not a strong argument for the way in which information is presented. The Lincoln-Douglas debate of 1858. The 7-hour-long debate took place in Ottawa in 1858. Postman argues that the political discourse issued was complex and characteristic of the 19th century. Intellectuals who attended were socially and educationally required to attend. Postman holds a high regard for those who attended, as he believes they were able to process the experience entirely orally. The discourse itself was considered more so literary. Both politicians composed their arguments, counter-arguments, and rebuttals prior to debate. But Postman, the printed word carries strong significance. Language in particular does too. At the time Postman was writing, the internet had not even come to fruition. Print was the main means of communication as well as television. He confirms that the age of reason was coexistent with print culture. More importantly, though, the debate was concerning the election of 1860 and each politician's views concerning their political affiliation. Each was given 60 minutes, and the other candidate was allotted a 90-minute response. The debate concerned divisions of slavery within the states. Lincoln was undecided about emancipation and the available means of effectively achieving it, whereas Douglas was not. Lincoln also admitted to viewing colonization as acceptable. Political discourse used today, especially in the Obama-Romney debate of 2012. While the debate of 1858 was racially charged, the 2012 debate was more focused on economic recovery, particularly tax cuts and the creation of jobs, as well as new methods of green energy and effective teaching. The debate itself lasted a little over an hour and a half, not nearly as long as the Lincoln-Douglas debate, but required sufficient attention. Obama used lengthy anecdotes to best explain his arguments and resolutions for the American crises at hand. Romney, in my opinion at least, used plain language to reach the American public. Healthcare or Obamacare was the core issue. Affordable healthcare for all Americans was a vital point of disagreement for Democrats and Republicans alike. How did both debates compare? Obviously, the debates centered on issues were different in nature, but both required the audience to pay particular attention to the issues at hand. Race divided the two candidates of 1858, whereas tax cuts considerably separated Romney and Obama. In comparison to the Lincoln-Douglas speeches, the discourse was fairly extensive and complex to intellectually comprehend, which Postman makes clear. I tend to disagree with Postman's claim that the caliber of attendees were literary intellectuals, because many of those who watched the 2012 debates had to have had some historical background or following to fully understand the context at hand. Resolution to the medium is the metaphor dilemma. Both debates required the ability to understand the politicians' oral arguments as well as the ability to comprehend and concentrate for a considerable time period. In addition, just like Lincoln and Douglas, both Romney and Obama prepped beforehand, devising counter-arguments and rebuttals. The fact that the 2012 debate was televised marks a strong contrast between the 19th century and today. Certainly body language was a factor back then, as it is now, but many critics tend to believe and assert that it is the main means of gaining perceived credibility, regardless of accuracy. Fact-checkers exist today to help ensure the politician is being truthful regarding certain statements. These fact-checkers, at least to my knowledge, were non-existent in 1858. The intellectuals who attended were expected to be well-versed in history, English, and any other assumed knowledge. As stated previously, the medium is the message, but for debate purposes, the television does not draw away or detract from the message getting across. The only difference is that the television reaches more people, whereas the 1858 debate reached a targeted few.